Now we're recording.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. So we have been unrecorded for an hour and 26 minutes, and part of that time was silliness and updates and catching up with social conversation, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that in creating this new world that we're attempting to create, that we need to turn the tables on business as usual and make sure that women are on the leadership council in a supermajority. And we had a lot of discussion about what that might look like, and the fact that that is going to be potentially very difficult for men who are involved, because for thousands of years in most cultures, men have been the decision makers. And so if we are moving into a place where Radish and this collective intelligence group is going to model this way of being for the new world, that we need to be really, really thoughtful about it. And we went back and forth and had some conversation about the fact that maybe it should just be all women. And yet that does not feel right to me personally, because I don't want to do to men what men have done to women for so long. So I think that the more diversity that there is, and not only between the sexes, but also in all sorts of other ways, we need to have very diverse groups. And sometimes women may meet alone, and sometimes men may meet alone, but the Leadership Council needs to have both. And we need to be as conscious of including everyone's voice as we possibly can be. So then we also had a fair amount of conversation about who to invite and how to make those invitations, and what information we're going to be sharing with people. And that was another big piece of the conversation, about putting together information that we can then go out and invite this diverse group of people to join us. And I'm not sure that we have yet enough people to make the Leadership Council. I don't know. That's a question that I have. There may be other people that we want to include on the Leadership Council who we don't know yet. And as people joined the call, there was deeper conversation that began taking place. So, one of the things that Melissa brought in was that, let me read it. One thing that's coming to me is that there is a lot of anger, both in women and people of color, that the white men will need to hold in a compassionate way. And how do you do that, guys? I think that's a really, really good question about, and Melissa, I would also add that I think women and people of color have to hold this in a compassionate way. Like how do we actually wholeheartedly forgive and forget, and move into this new world where there is actual equality between men and women, and between white people and people of color, and between people who have a lot and people who don't have a lot, and people who have different physical abilities and intellectual abilities. And how do we make sure that nature is included in the wisdom making, right? So I mean, there's a lot for us to think about, which is why this issue about who to invite early on, I mean, eventually, I'm hoping that people will be clamoring to get in, and there will actually be 1 million lanes that many, many people can join. But right now, I think the invitation list needs to be somewhat strategic. And I am so not a marketing person that it's hard for me to think in these ways. But I think that we need to get the people on board who have entree into much bigger worlds than we currently have entree into, so that we can include people from a very diverse set of backgrounds, and who get the compassionate part of all of this, and that this is about promoting life and diversity, and it is not about making money. It's about sustainability. It's about having a future. It's about all beings, not just humans, not just wealthy white ones, all beings are really important. So there's a few more. Yeah, Jamin is a marketing person. Yes. And yes, so we need to hear from you. And Melissa said, I think we might need to identify what the platform is going to focus upon and invite from there. Yep. I agree with all of that. And Jamin, please add, or anyone else who's been on the call. Benjamin and Nolan has been on the call for the whole time, and Frank for most of it, Fred for a lot of it. So you guys feel free to add anything that I forgot to say.
Well, I would just jump in to add that we might apply collective intelligence to the building out of the Leadership Council, right? And, the collective intelligence is precisely this. Not that we have to do it right away. I'm just saying, like, that's just one idea, is to literally use the collective intelligence and invite a whole bunch of people into the conversation, not be exclusive, not like, hey, all right, we got a dozen, that's enough. We're the ones who own this, right? That sounds pretty male to me. Why don't we just invite, as we have been, see, the Solution Club is just this open source kind of place. We will definitely have meetings that are invite only. Like the Leadership Council will just meet amongst themselves. The women who constitute the supermajority of the Leadership Council will meet amongst themselves from time to time. And frankly, anyone else who wants to meet amongst themselves can do so. So some meetings are just wide open like this one. Others are more bounded, even to the point of invite only, period. Nobody else even knows about it. Like this one. Well, it's not, we're not recording. And no, this is open invitation. And just look at who shows up. And look at how far we've come. I mean, this is just, for me, this is the biggest thing ever. I mean, forget collective intelligence. This will be known as the social network led by women, led by amazing women, right? For healing Mother Earth, for saving life on Earth. Cooling the planet is part of that. Going vegan is part of that. All this cool stuff, right? We might as well load up all the features into the Tesla pickup truck, right? And I know that's very male, what I said, but sometimes I'll just express myself as a male. Anyway, going on mute.
You're on mute, Fred.
Yeah, I want to say that I think we don't want to make too much out of the differences between men and women, and that the disproportionate power of one. I mean, yes, it's visible in a lot of parts of the world and all of that, but I maintain that women have a lot of power that is not acknowledged. I mean, maybe in the corporate area, men and government, men still dominate, but most of them have women in their lives. And I believe that the women in their lives impact their decision-making as well. So I just don't want things to, okay, we're going to swing so radically to a super majority of women. I would like to see the best people, whether they're men or women, be in the whatever circle, the ultimate decisional circle, not just because they're women and they, it's their turn. It's going on for all of us now, whether we're a man or a woman. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out, or agree with Anne. I think Anne brought it up. We don't want to make too much about differences. We want to accentuate what's common to all humanity.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is important, Fred. And I also think that this is something that we've talked about in the past, and I'm not speaking for any women myself, but it has been raised that for women to feel comfortable speaking in a group like this, there has to be a percentage a certain percentage for that to happen. And so we want it to be, you know, a good environment for everybody. And we're trying to figure out what that looks like, you know. So if the best people are all men,
they're not the best.
Male.
They're not necessarily the best people. I mean, I'm saying, you know, whoever is, whether it's male or female, it's like, yeah.
I'm just saying that the meeting, the conversation would change at that point.
Yeah, and I think what Evan brought up, that he's pondering now through the World Peace Diet, and the idea that the divine feminine has been overshadowed for 8,000 years, and that the divine feminine is in essence that we have to have, and we have allowed all sorts of events, but mostly articulated by men, to overtake that sense. So I talked in one of the recent meetings about the book that's called The Chalice and the Blade, but just think about the imagery of the chalice and the blade. The chalice represents women. Now, in part, that's because women actually carry the babies, right? But the chalice, that there is a vessel that holds life. And the blade, which takes life and is at its essence violent. And there's a whole lot more. I am way oversimplifying that whole concept. But the idea that women are a vessel that hold and nurture life, and men are not. And the divine feminine has to be a strong voice in this new world, or all we're going to do is put a Band-Aid on this issue and get back to it at some point. We have to make a very big change, and men have to come with us, and women have to come with, I mean, we all have to relearn how to promote life, and not only among humans, but among all living beings, including plant life and healthy water and air and all of that. And so for me, that imagery of the vessel, of the chalice and the blade is very strong. And I'd like to read what Melissa wrote. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She wrote, "The divine feminine flows through all of us. Tipping the scales is not intended to exclude men, absolutely, but to give voice to women and to hear that feminine voice rather than constantly overriding it with the male domination of possession rather than nurturing." Yes, absolutely, Melissa. That is beautifully, beautifully said. Thank you.
May I jump in real quick here and offer something? Yes, okay. Just from, I guess, kind of the tribal, traditional, elder, shamanistic, whatever, I don't know where it comes from 100%, but what I've learned about women is they have this incredible intuition to get what it's about, whatever it is, because they're the vessel that creates and brings things into the world. So basically anything getting created on this planet is the woman who does it. And not just the feminine principle, because men don't have a womb to do that with. So it really is females. And with that intuition, what men can use their intelligence with unbending intent to stay focused on whatever it's going to take to get there. And that's why I think leadership with women is realistic, because they're the creative vessels and they have the intuition. They're going to see what's going to be best for all of life in making a decision in relation to anything. And then in general with men, the unbending intent is like, okay, we got to get there and let's use our intelligence to figure out how we're going to do that. So that's just something I wanted to add in, because this just makes a lot of sense to me. And this isn't the first female-led thing. I was part of something for over a decade that was the most powerful people in it were all women. So this is just, I think, beautiful though, because it's the feminine principle is taking over and it's becoming taking the lead. It's not the suffering son anymore. It's the mother, which includes all of us. So it's really about the children, if you really want to get technical, but it's coming out of the mother and birthing out of the mother in the big picture, in a very overall overarching sense of how consciousness is going to move, the style of it, the feel of it, the identity of it is changing. So the feminine is definitely taking over anyway. It's going to get a lot, and the patriarchy is getting really insane and crazy and starting to invent all kinds of ways to make us think it's hopeless and that there's no way we're ever going to get there. No, that's just the dying gasps of the patriarchy. And that's the truth. I mean, it is, no matter how intense it seems. It ain't going to.
And may it die hard. Back to you, Dharmendra.
Oh, I was done. I just wanted to kind of throw my 2 cents in there, because those are the important things to remember. The womb, the vessel, is what creates. It's what brings things into the world. It's through women that things come into this world. It's up to men what to do with it and how to get there with that overall vision that's been born through women. So it just makes sense that women have a natural, for the most part. I don't even know if the word leadership is right. I know a lot of women aren't even comfortable with that term leadership, but it's just that's what they do. They create. They are a vessel. They bring things in. Men don't have a womb. They cannot do that. Just not in the nature of things. But they can certainly use their intelligence to find out the best way to get through the labyrinth of whatever issues are going to arise and trying to realize it. And with unbending intent. That's what men bring into the world, unbending intent. That once they get clear about something, nothing is going to stop them. But now it has to be done in a loving manner with our neighbors, not in a I'm going to conquer it manner, because that's the way the male has been in the past. But the new definition of male is not martial, which means war. It's mutative, which means change.
Love it, love it, love it. And we're going to show them how it's done, aren't we? Right, guys?
Well, we got a lot of work to do, guys. That's the point.
Starting with you, Fred. Mandatory shave and a haircut for Fred.
I'm getting one at 2:30. Thank you.
Oh, I thought you said you
could follow me.
Here's the thing. I thought you said you had one already, and that's why I was giving you so much crap.
No, clearly I haven't.
Look at
Raymond and Nolan, this is Frank. I have to drop off now for other matters, so I look forward to the next time. All right,
Frank, I have a question for you. Did you know Norman Kroll?
I have met him, and
He's a cousin of mine.
oh, is he?
Yeah.
He's associated with Los Alamos, or
I think he had something to do with that, but I think he ran the physics department at UCSD.
oh, okay, yes,
Yeah.
that's right. I think sometimes he was here, but mostly over there.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I did meet him. I met him once.
Okay,
Okay.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye now.
bye.
Hey, Uncle Frank, love you. And listen, next time we can honor Aunt Phaedra, because I definitely want you here when we do that. So feel free to either rejoin us later or next time.
I have a question.
We'll do that.
Love you, Uncle Frank.
I have a question. Are all of these changes that we're contemplating, I mean, they're enormous. They're, polar exchanges or whatever. And is this going to happen in a reasonable period of time, or are these?
It happened, Fred, I'm just going to put it right on the table, okay?
It's on the table.
All right. It happened before you joined the meeting.
Oh, okay. The world changed before I joined the meeting.
Yeah, we're just giving you a courtesy memo and saying now come with us, right?
Okay.
Or
I'm
else.
not talking about what's going on in the meeting. I'm talking about. Okay, all right. I can see that I'm being dismissed now. So that's fine.
Unmute. Who the fuck is dismissing you?
No,
Who's
it's
dismissing?
fine. It's fine. I'm just always worried about time considerations.
Well,
Because we're talking about such enormous changes. And as I've stated many times, the way I view human behavior is not as sanguine maybe as as you do.
Spell it out for us all. You can do that.
Whatever. But hey, look, I'm on board. Whatever it is, I mean, we got to do something. That's for sure.
So
Anyway,
I'd like,
got to go get my hair cut, Jamin. So I will see you guys next Tuesday.
okay, hey, Fred, can you just hang on for like literally a minute? I just want
Sure.
to read a quote
Yeah.
for you to think about. And the quote is, "There is no way to overstate the magnitude of the collective spiritual transformation that will occur when we shift from food of violent oppression to food of gentleness and compassion." That's a Will Tuttle quote. And for me, it encompasses more than the food. It encompasses moving from a primarily masculine outlook on the world to a primarily feminine outlook where life is nurtured. And so it just kind of ruminate over that for the next
I'll
week.
ruminate over that. Okay. I will. I'll be a ruminant.
Okay, cool.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank
Love
you.
you, Fred. Love you, Fred. Thanks for being here.
I'll talk to you soon, James. Okay. Bye, everyone. See you. Tomorrow. Okay, Ben. Bye-bye. You. Adios. Okay.
He goes by Ben.
Love you guys.
Just so you know. Love you too, Fred.
Okay.
So I'd like to go back and read what Melissa wrote just a few minutes ago, which is that none of us really know what it will be like when the mother influence is fully active here on the planet. It is really exciting, and it will be a wonderful world when it finally happens. I don't think any of us do know exactly what it's going to be like, nor do we know what the transition is going to be like. But if we can have an influence, if the divine feminine can have a strong influence on the transition, it will be much more peaceful than the transition that many people are fearing. Because right now, I think a lot of people are terrified of what they will have to give up to have a sustainable earth. And I think that there is a completely different way to look at this and do this, and it does not have to be that way. We'll find out as we move forward. Hopefully we will be, this collective intelligence group will be collectively influencing the way this transition happens.
I couldn't agree with you more, Anne. This is so amazing. I am kind of beyond words right now. And I just want to acknowledge how wonderful everyone on this call is. Just amazing. So thank you.
So since I'm like talking too much today, but I did want to just share.
No, you're not talking too much, not at all. Carry on, Anne.
Okay, well, there's another thing that is coming to the surface for me right now, and I don't know history nearly as well as I need to, but my understanding is that thousands of years ago, women, mothers, the earth was worshipped because she brought life, right? So it was the life bringers that were the mystical ones. It was the life bringers that were the people and animals that, and the earth was seen as a mother because of all of the plants and the water and the land and everything. So the feminine was worshipped. And somehow after hurting began, that all began to change. And I remember growing up, I grew up Catholic and hearing about the pagans and how bad they were, when the reality appears to be that the pagans were the original people that were worshiping the divine feminine and the earth as the bringers of life. And that makes so much sense. I mean, if we think back to a time when we didn't have science, we didn't understand a lot of things, then of course the beings that brought new life into the world would be seen as mystical and magical and beautiful and incredible, and they would be worshipped. And then it's like we took this wrong turn somewhere. And we ended up in this completely different place. And now we're trying to figure out how it is we get back to worshiping life instead of worshiping money or stuff or power or whatever it is. But life is what we should be worshiping. So it's something that I think about a fair amount in figuring out how we move from where we are to where we want to be.
I'd just like to jump in and say like that I like totally agree with you. That's something that's really taken me over recently is well, feeling this sort of mother presence in my life more and trying to tune in with the part of me that like cares for me and like a mother would. And so through that, I care for myself more. And then when I extend that out to the world, that shows itself in the form of compassion. And then, so it's just been like this transformation with looking at animals totally different. And yeah, and it seems really clear now from like the history that I was taught in school of how we went from these like pagan animistic religions to these monotheistic ones, and just how like we have all these myths of a world of fantastical creatures, and it's like we've forgotten that we live in this mythical, fantastical world where we've got these magical beasts roaming the oceans and jumping out of the sky, and we have things flying in the air. It's like it seems almost like it's like sadly silly how lost we've come and how like desensitized we have become to like just the beauty of the natural world. Yeah, I know that has made a huge impression on me, and I imagine that framing it like that for other people potentially will too. Just trying to bring people into this and reaching out to them through their love of life, and because everyone has something natural in the world that just makes them feel like infinite and divine, and I think we need to speak to people through those channels.
Absolutely, Evan. And so part of our goal has to be how do we bring people, how do we reach that part of people to bring them in?
Well,
I think
I think that.
like you were saying earlier. Oh, go ahead, Evan.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I think it's food, but go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Well, I think it's tied into that too. We were talking earlier about the human experiment documentary and how that brought this like entirely new perspective for you to look things at through Anne, and just like the World Peace Diet did for me, is it just allowed me to look at the world through this entirely new lens. I think it's about once you get a taste of other perspectives, or at least for me, as I'm speaking from my perspective, I wanted to seek out more perspectives, and that has kind of what has led me to collective intelligence, because it kind of seems like a place for us to gather those perspectives and share them. And I wonder if that's kind of how we can guide people is these eye-opening documentaries that are shining a light on these subjects that are, a segment of the truth. And there's this meeting place where we're trying to gather all of that and allow all perspectives to be heard. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about. Yeah.
That's cool. That is very cool. I want to hold that for a second, Benjamin, and I want to go back and read what Melissa just wrote. One of my refugee students wrote this poem. My mother, whose eyes were like the surface of a quiet sea, whose words were like pure water irrigating thirsty fields, whose advice gave clarity like eyeglasses so I could see the right way. My mother, whose face was like a garden. Every time I looked at her, I rested among flowers. That is beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. And we want to know a little bit more about your student, Melissa. So I don't know if maybe just writing it in, but we might want to capture that and put it someplace. But also, yeah, okay, she's from Syria. And how old is she? I was curious about how old she is. 15. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. And then Melissa also said these notions, emotions, and intuitions are deeply seated in all of us. We need to tap back into this realm through art and poetry as well. Absolutely. And so, Benjamin, what you were just talking about, that our eyes get opened in different ways. Documentaries are one of the good ways, that because somehow watching a documentary seems to be less defense provoking, you know, and we're able to watch the documentary, whereas having a conversation with someone, it seems like we're being put on the defensive if we're having the conversation, but if we're watching it on a screen, somehow it's easier and we're more open to hearing what the message is, or that appears to be what's happening. And certainly Sailesh has a great list of films. And I was quite happy because I'm like, oh, I saw that. And then I was like, oh, I haven't seen The Human Experiment. I have to go watch that. And then I got my world, you know.
Yeah, we just got through those. We just got through that list of documentaries, and so yeah, right there with you on the Human Experiment.
Yeah.
I just like to say that I think the films are the films are really valuable, and I think collective intelligence is really valuable in general because it's something that we can explore on our own, free from the kind of cultural mold that we are normally surrounded with in social environments, where I can hop on a call with people who don't know me and I don't know them, and so I'm free to explore a little bit more, like painlessly and fearlessly. And I think that when we're by ourselves and we can consume content, like in the form of film or YouTube or articles, as the internet provides for people, we are able to explore and get in touch with ourselves, free from like the fear of embarrassment. Because I think that's a big reason why people don't like the confrontation of a conversation about veganism, is because it's just so like right there and you're just put on the spot immediately. But yeah, I think the films are incredibly valuable. I think and that's why I think the documentation of us going through this process and collective intelligence evolving is just super valuable, because people can kind of witness it after in the aftermath of it. They don't have to be there in the moment to experience it for the first time.
Evan, I think that is a really, really, really important thing that you just said. So part of the incredible value of this methodology, for lack of another word, where people from all over the world can come together who don't necessarily know each other, but come together around the topic that they are interested in and have really deep conversation, but in a way that is palatable, that is easier to handle and allows them to go a little bit deeper than they might otherwise go. I think that's one of the points that we need to figure out how to talk about in whatever marketing strategy we're going to use with people. Some way to let people know about the openness of this methodology, the ease of this methodology, if you will. So that was just really important.
Yeah, thank you.
I feel like a key component of it is it's like come as you are, and then you kind of just learn as you are. So you aren't bound to the cultural tools of your geography or your time, because now we're kind of liberating ourselves from that to where, yeah, maybe the Christian mythos works for some people to get in touch with the divine, but for a lot of people it doesn't. And when you hit a wall, I think collective intelligence is going to be able to just have our own spiritual evolution just flow like water, to where when it hits the wall, it just flows around, and we aren't we don't get stuck in. We're going to liberate ourselves from the frustration of feeling isolated, because I think that's what makes a lot of spiritual journeying troubling for so many people, is how isolating it can be. Or at least I know that's what it was like for me initially, and I that's what I hope to like free people from in the future, is the isolation because it's so nice to have a spiritual community. It makes things so much lighter. Like the minute there's a second person to talk to about what's going on inside your head, it's like all of a sudden tons of pressure is released. And I think a lot of us we have a lot of built up pressure as individuals, and so there's like a fear about opening up that well. Because I know for me, opening up the well of veganism, it just opened up a whole flurry of emotions and like guilt, and it was very emotional. It was angering and saddening, and I think that's what a lot of this might end up looking like, is like we're going to have to comfort people with coming to terms with not just what other people have done, but what they themselves have done or could do. Yeah.
Might I, unless I'm interrupting, am I interrupting somebody? I don't interrupt. Okay. I wrote this crazy thing out the other day, and I just thought now all of a sudden my heart's telling me this might be the time to share, because it's the invocation of presence of the great grand feminine, at least through my eyes, which I call, by the way, when I read this out, the universal life force, because that to me is the great mother. That is what sustains all of us. It's our very heartbeat. It's the spark of life. It's where the spark of life comes from. That is our spirit when we come into this world. It's all kinds of things. But anyway, if everybody's open, and if you feel like this is the moment, just to create a sacred space, maybe thumbs up so I can see if that feels good to everybody right now. Do I have any thumbs up for that? Jamin and Nolan are busy chatting about something and they're not responding.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just making a quick comment to Nolan, but I certainly didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I was just saying I was going to do an invocation of presence that needs everybody's presence, if you feel like it right now, and not be making comments about other things right now.
I'm totally in.
Okay, and because and if at any point anybody has anything powerful come through them at any moment, feel free to enter in and dance with it. But this is the the great universal mother invocation of presence in the way that it came through me the other day, beginning with stopping the world now. So just for a moment, let's just get out of the world for a moment and come into our presence and enter the space of inner silence, where we arrive effortlessly at the center in the innermost sacred essence of the cave of the heart. And immersed in this sea of essence, I now attune myself to the heartbeat of the absolute at the center of the labyrinth of the creation. And with single-pointed focus of attention in the now to the present moment, I open to receive the emanations of grace, connecting me to the wisdom of the universal life force that guides all sentient beings along the most optimal path of their life's unfolding in being their unique contribution to the whole. Who am I in this divine geometry of the whole, where I am flowing in the way of the white clouds through this wide open sky of awareness, moved by the winds of love? my only one and true desire to relieve the suffering of every last sentient being and promote the goodness that embraces all and everything under heaven to flower in the unveiling of its own mystery in the light of truth. The flower of life growing within my heart, nurtured by my own authenticity, allows me to embrace my lower nature and transform it into the gift that is residing in my genes, put there many ages ago by my sacred animal ancestor brothers and sisters. They trusted that their gift would be safe with us, their true caretakers that one day would serve as the bridge to reconnect us all into the network of communication, serving all of life in its embrace. Guided by the deep wisdom of my higher self through the diamond field of my own awakening and all of our awakenings into the full realization of all of our own most optimal unfolding now, I am led along the feelings left in its tracks back to the place of the real and sincere expression of this unique creativity elaborated in the living of my and our life every moment with every breath I and we take. Let the suffering of others purify my sins as I take those sufferings offered so generously deep into my heart and return to them compassion in my thoughts, words, and deeds. Knowing that this is the true transmission of the light of all esoteric lineages of attaining to what is the full potential of what it is to be a human as you, a divine messenger, that is the mother, and a spiritual warrior of peace, that is men. Through the dynamic sphere of my own living energy field along the ley lines of my own internal organ meridians, I request that the harmony of nature take up its residence in this humble abode of my physical presence and regenerate all of my everyday moment-to-moment movements into the gracefulness of spontaneous presence, neutralizing in its circulation all of that which doesn't serve me in the serving of others. This I offer up to the whole as the creative expression of my cross of life, activated and imprinted into my genes the moment I entered this world, my only task being to complete it and celebrate the divine gifts placed within me. This is my prayer that the universal life force, i.e. the Great Mother, use me as its vehicle to unfold its potential into this world, that I may prove to be a worthy vessel in the story that is told through the living of my life. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So that's just my offering, just to invite in what everybody's been talking about today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And a great example of Melissa saying we need to bring art and poetry into all of this. So thank you for bringing some poetry.
Thank you, Anne.
Wow. Phew. So this is fascinating to me, the difference in the culture of each of our gatherings, right? Some are really exciting, some are more factual. This feels warm and fuzzy today in a kind of different way than it has before. So I'm getting some nods and hand waves. So I'm guessing that other people are feeling the same as well. So it's just fascinating. And I actually feel like I need like a moment or two of silence, like just a little bit to allow this to wash over me. So if we could just literally a minute or two. Okay, so thanks, Melissa. I appreciate that a lot. And I also have to say, it feels a little odd to be like literally the only feminine voice. I mean, Melissa is here, and so it's been important to me, Jamin, and I didn't mean to step on your toes, but it has been important for me to voice her voice. I don't know why. It just feels like it needed to be an actual feminine voice sharing Melissa's voice since she's been typing. And that also sounds kind of silly, but it is where I was coming from. So where would we like to go from here? I feel like we have a turning point right now, and I invite anyone to. Yeah, Melissa says she's grateful for allowing her voice to be heard. Yes. Yeah, Melissa, your voice is very important. And yes, we do need silliness. Go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, well, amen to silliness. And also, I just wanted to, this is so providential. Literally yesterday, I was sharing with Nolan and Benjamin about how I'm so ready to pass the baton of leadership. It'll be a relief. I've been at this for almost 6 years straight. Actually, 6 years ago, I gave my first lecture on the global holistic model and all these far-reaching implications and collective intelligence, which had been brewing through the cannabis industry since President Vicente Fox and I kicked it off in a big way. And so it's just been 6 years. I'm ready to, and who better to give it to, to hand off the baton to, right? And so it's just, for me, just so exciting and such a relief, right? I feel like I can now shift and do what I do best, which is more on the creative side and, networking and, all kinds of cool stuff. Stuff I've actually just naturally started doing today, now that I see the meeting is in such good hands. Anyway, going on mute.
I just thought I would mention, just kind of, Anne sort of tipped me off into going kind of like meta right now and just watching the feel and the flow of all of it. And it's interesting because it just, the energy feels so much more feminine today. Like I was going to say a moment ago before you said what you said, James, it's like, okay, what's the agenda for day and all this? And then that just kind of dissolved into this space, kind of just and just went wherever it needed to go. And I don't know, I guess what I've noticed in my experience in life, and especially with having a mirror in my life, and she took charge quite a while back. I kind of just realized there was no way I could stand up to that after a while. And I just went, okay. And it wasn't a thing that was ever said out loud. I just surrendered into, the fact that women have a nose for what's happening right in front of them, so much more than most of us men whose heads are in the clouds, always thinking all these great ideas to save the world when women are basically saving it, which I find rather hilarious, because, we men are so full of ourselves so many times about what we think we got to give and offer. And yes, we do have a good intellect and all those things, but what's a good intellect if you don't have the intelligence to live it and apply it? Because women will take their intuition and they'll apply it. They're not just going to sit back there and go, well, whatever. They're not going to give birth to anything they're not going to do. So it's funny how so much of the time we men spend so much time in our minds, planning for something. And then when it actually comes right down to it, our pants fall down, we trip over ourselves and hit the mud face first and go, oh shit, I planned everything. How did that happen? And the woman's already 10 feet ahead going, this way, guy, let's go. And I'm not exaggerating. I see it more and more all the time. It really, that's the world we created with the masculine, it's like such a really, when you really look at it from a super meta zoomed out space, it's just silly. If we're going to live here on this planet and live all together, then there is so much we can learn from and trust with the intuition that's just going to keep opening the space, just like the womb. It holds things in it. And until they germinate. Once they germinate, they pass through the womb into the world. The man goes, oh my God, look at this. What do we got here? Okay, and we need to give women a chance to start doing that, because I think if we do that, it will bring us too into that place where we move out of intellect and into intelligence and start kicking some ass about using that warrior skill of ours instead of to hurt, to mutate, to change the order of things, guided by that intuition. As usual, I'm always moved to things. So that's my best offering, is just to keep opening spaces and doing stuff. And I love listening to all you guys and the practicals and all those things. Once in a while, I have some practical stuff if it's in my domain, but I'm really just this, you know, I really have just this mad ecstasy for poetry and other things, and feeling in the heart and sharing things in a way that moves people, so that we just stay present with each other and feel really good about it. I guess is a really simple way of putting it, you know. So anyway, that's I just feel a lot softer today. I love the space today. I love the feeling of it. It just feels like I can talk like this now, instead of that martial arts side of me that has to come in and swing swords with the guys who come in and tell me these things, blah, 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 you know. But anyway, I just so love the sweetness and the softness. It just makes it feel like there's space to express what really needs to be expressed without having to worry about where it's going to get, what it's going to, oh God, I just get a headache thinking about it right now, how to express it that way. Anyway, such a pleasure to have that, to acknowledge the power of the woman. And in my opinion, that leadership is already there. It's just a matter of how long is it going to take us to wake up to it, guys. It's not really a matter of us shifting it like we really have a say in that. That's not really how it is. How it is it's already there. Just got to stop and take a look and go, oh shit, they're right. Crap. I got to change my fucking agenda. Oops, I cussed. Happens once in a while. Sorry for anybody out there offended, any of you, whoever gets offended by a quick use of a word that works well in many situations most of the time to describe things with a little bit of oomph and zest. Anyway, I think I'm going to go on mute right now.
Thank you, Dharmendra. Melissa had a couple of things that she put in. She said, I'm not sure, Jamin Love, that it is passing the baton and doing something else. More a learning, a new way of seeing and listening to fuel all that you do and will do. Also, we need your strength and energy to move forward, along with Dharmendra's meditative poetry. And Jamin agreed, and Melissa said it is a circle. And I have to say, Melissa, I really appreciate you bringing that up, because when Jamin, when you were talking about passing the baton, I was thinking, well, wait. That imagery didn't quite feel exactly right. I think we might want to share some of this, yeah, and between multiple people, right? I don't think we're at a point, and we may never get at a point that, well, this is the facilitator and that's the way it's going to be. Women don't actually do things like that or do it that way, right?
And can I jump in real quick, because I love what you're saying. And just like we do in vegan synergy meditation, it's like everybody has to handle the baton. Everybody has to learn how to not only handle the baton, but shift through a whole spectrum and range of experience and be honest and real and clear about it. Because if we don't start acclimatizing ourselves to the full range of what it is to be human, and that includes 50% feminine and 50% masculine in the total overall makeup of who we are. Half the Tai Chi symbol is male with the female in the center, and the other half is female with the male in the center. It's all written there and it's all written there in our genes. The 64 hexagrams of the I Ching is the 64 genetic codons that are what we are. So it's just, it's so true. And it's like, if we're doing collective intelligence, everybody has to be the leader, and everybody has to be, I don't like the words leader and follower, quite frankly. I like just one who's sharing of the opening the way in that moment, and everybody else is holding the grace for that. And then the next person is opening the way, and everybody else is holding grace for that. That way we're all part of that movement without there being any separation, without there being any distinction. And the truth is, the more feminine you can become with that, the better you're going to get at it. That's the holding the grace part. And then you step into that moment of the point, and you hold that point for a moment, and with unbending intent, you express it. Then you pass it on, and the next person and everybody else just holds the space for that person to make their point resonate through the whole room. That way we all function like a great big womb for the point that's coming in for each person who's holding that baton. Just a metaphorical example of how to start to apply this principle in a way that kind of transcends and includes the masculine and the feminine by bringing them to their, and there's a lot of practice to be done to really refine it, but to get it to start to flow in a way where all of us can channel that, can vehicle that, can bring it through. And Anne, I'd love any commentary you might have or feedback. I'm beginning to learn to trust you as a very powerful voice with really good reflective abilities in terms of feedback, especially in things like this. So.
Thank you, Dharmendra. I believe that we collectively form the culture of the day, right? And so, as I mentioned earlier, it seems like each meeting, each gathering, I don't really like the word meeting, each gathering has had a different ambiance, and each of us have contributed in one way or another. And as we get to know each other better, we're going to be able to get into some of these deeper spaces more quickly, although 2.5 hours isn't really quickly, but I'm sorry that. But I think we will be able to do that. And Dharmendra, I think you're absolutely right that as we pass the baton, Evan, pass the talking stick. I mean, we've been using some Indigenous people's terminology. So the talking stick, the idea that each of us can hold the talking stick for a period of time and contribute what it is that we have to contribute, and the rest of us holding that space is a really powerful image. I'm really happy about that, really happy. So the idea of the relay race, the idea of the talking stick, the idea of each of us holding the space for each other, all of those things are really important. And I'm guessing that we are going to move through many different ambiances, cultures, feelings as we hold these leadership councils or whatever it is that we're moving into as we move forward. And I think it's going to be really exciting. Melissa said it's a very humbling experience when we allow new speakers to set the mood, and we can learn so much from this. And I think everybody helps to set the mood every single time we get together. And I'm feeling more comfortable as time goes on to be able to speak more and to speak more deeply. And, Evan, what you were talking about is, come as you are and learn as you are and feel comfortable. I think that's really powerful imagery also, that we don't have to be someone that we aren't, or someone that we think other people think we are. We tend to complicate these things so much. And this is just an easy way not to have to do that. So.
Thanks, Anne. I've really appreciated hearing more and more of your voice, and especially today. And I resonate with that because I'm socially an introvert, and I don't necessarily feel comfortable sharing on this deep of a level, especially on a video recording. So everybody here has inspired me and kind of given me the courage too. And I just I hope that we can keep opening up opening up the space for everybody to have a voice in whatever way they can, and that it keeps on improving. And I'm actually gonna jump off the call right now, but I wanted to bring up one more thing before I left. We had this meeting with Tom Atlee, and I've been looking into his pattern language and pattern cards that he's created for both groupthink and this the Wise Democracy Project. And I think it would be really beneficial for all of us to start looking at those cards. I'm going to purchase a set for Suzanne and I to look at and kind of learn, because he's been spending a lot of time, like years and years, thinking about how groups can get together like this and make progress. And there's a lot of language that's been developed around that through experimentation that I'm super interested in, and I hope that I can bring some of that to the table eventually. And yeah, so I just wanted to talk about that. He's co-founder of the Co-Intelligence Institute, and the project is called Wise Democracy Project. And then he also has another one called Groupthink. So yeah, I'm excited to get into that, and hopefully we can. I know you were saying that it took us 2.5 hours to get to this point, but I think that there are tools that will help us proceed in other directions more quickly, and maybe that's not necessarily necessary sometimes, but I think it'd be interesting to start evolving our language around this and be able to reach even deeper levels at certain points through this. So yeah, just wanted to bring that to the
Benjamin,
table
before you go real quick, can I share one thing?
Yeah.
Because it's coming up in the first for you, Vegan Synergy Meditation. Make sure you check out the documents I put in there, because everything you're talking about could blend in with these. I checked out the whole website, downloaded all the pattern stuff, because I always explore everybody I meet. I want to know who I'm talking with. But the 64 Siddhas, Gifts, and Shadows, I sent out 2 versions. One is just the straight talk, and the other one has to do with animal totems for all 64, through all the shadows, all the gifts, and all the Siddhas. And that's in the Vegan Synergy Meditation announcement. You can download those documents. There's no problem with the copyright, because the guy who created them, who I am part of that thing too, it's called Gene Keys, Richard Rudd. Brilliant stuff. He's fine with that, because he wants everybody to get that stuff. But I'm deeply steeped into that stuff. And the chart I did, which I created my own version of in the first Vegan Synergy, download that too, because that shows an artistic expression of something that I'll be unpacking over many Vegan Synergy meditation group meetings. And the numbers on it correspond exactly to the numbers in the Siddha charts from Richard Rudd. So that's just something else to familiarize yourself with, because I think if we can move through those states while learning these pattern languages, we're going to become masterful. Because he's brilliant too. He is absolutely brilliant, Tom. I love what he's done with the pattern thing, because that's kind of taking all that stuff and applying it right into life. But you got to have something to apply, and the inner oomph, that's what I'm always good with. So that's what all the Siddhas and shadows and gifts are about, because they fire you and make you want to do those things instead of just making them empty, dead knowledge.
Cool.
So that's it. I just want to throw that out real quick just before you took off, because anybody else who's going to be doing the meeting this week in Vegan Synergy, check that stuff out, because that's really, really cool, useful stuff.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for sharing those things. I haven't had a chance to deep dive into them yet, but I saw that you posted them, and I'm going to take a look before the meeting. And I just wanted to confirm with Jamin and Nolan, are you guys going to be available for the next meeting at 3:00? Would you be able to host that meeting? I've been having internet issues.
I'll be happy. We'll be happy to. We're delighted.
Oh, that would be awesome.
No hesitation.
Cool.
Done.
So I'll see you guys at 3:00 then.
And you sent out the latest link to that the Zoom link, right?
Yeah. Oh, and I sent out the link without a password. I don't know if you have to change your settings when you launch the meeting.
I don't think I need a password.
Like that.
I mean, I'll be logged in if I do. I'll just be automatic.
Cool.
I think it's smart enough to know that I'm logged in. But anyway, so I'll just I just click on that same link, the join Zoom meeting, and I'll be in control.
All right. Thank you, Benjamin.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. And
all right.
Did Melissa already leave?
Yes, she did.
Okay.
I'm texting her, so I'll text her whatever you want to tell her.
Okay. I just wanted to say thank you, and to just announce to the group that she was leaving. So
Anne says thank you! Exclamation point!
And Melissa also, she typed in that Tom Atlee mentioned how to bring in the patterning of the feminine into everything. So I think it's important that we take a look at that. And Benjamin, I also wanted to thank you. There were a couple of times in previous meetings when I brought up Theory U, and the reason that I was bringing it up, and I didn't articulate it very well, is that there are methodologies to get groups of people to think more deeply, more quickly. I didn't say it that way, but that is why I was bringing it up. It wasn't about joining them. It wasn't about doing their thing. It was that there are methodologies out there that can help us to get into a much deeper space much more quickly. And they're not shortcuts. They're just, you said it beautifully, Benjamin, the language that you used around those methodologies. So would you also throw into Basecamp what it is you're ordering from Time Out?
Yeah.
Others of us want to do that. We're getting the exact same thing, so that we might take a look at that and use some of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Cool. I'll see you guys in a little bit.
Okay.
All right.
See you later, Benjamin.
Thanks, Benjamin.
Goodbye.
Take care.
All right, and I'm kind of wondering, it's what is it? I don't know what time it is for you. It's 4:32 here, so it's 1:32 for you.
Yeah.
I do need to feed dogs and feed myself because the meeting will start in an hour and a half. Are we at a point to take a break? Do we want to do that? Do some of us want to keep going and I'll step off and maybe come back on?
Yeah, I'm going to pause recording. Okay, back on it after a pause. I thought it'd be cool to kind of jam on kind of the marketing of this, right? Because it's just so exciting, the fact that it's women-led, not by a majority, but a super majority. I mean, what a statement, right? And so I'm kind of envisioning a bifurcation in between the worlds of Mark Zuckerberg, Putin, Trump, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, the NSA, Microsoft, Google, Yahoo, all the big, just these big male-dominated institutions that are about fundamentally power, control, and ownership, and monopoly, to call a spade, right? Versus the women-led social network, the women-led collective intelligence, right? And so the fact that it's women-led is going to attract amazing female leaders, in so many beautiful ways, to just jump into the conversation, right? And I think leaders will naturally emerge from within the conversation. That's part of, letting the collective intelligence sort it out, right? Not to whether it should be a majority or super majority. That's set in stone, super majority as far as I'm concerned, right? And we're talking about Radish, which I own outright. So anyway, I'm just saying I have the full authority to proclaim this. And so with that set in stone, and the story of collective intelligence, and the story of veganism, right? And the story of solar radiation management and cooling the planet. It's starting to be incredibly powerful. Collective intelligence, SRM, veganism, and led by amazing women leaders. The whole thing led by women leaders. And I wanted to screen share. Just like when female leadership comes to mind, a lot of myths come to mind, and one of the myths is about the Amazon. Right. So I'm just going to do a quick screen share. This is just like, I don't know what the word is. Help me out, Dharmendra. But it's like, I don't know, providential, or just like, you can't make this up. But wait a second. Okay. Do you see that picture of the Amazon? Okay. Since we're recording, just to give some context here, I am the program chair of the East Bay Sierra Club dinners in Berkeley, California. We have monthly dinners with just amazing speakers on incredible topics. This is one of the very best of all time, if not the best, Dr. Lucia Garces Lohman, and it's called Amazonia, A Story of Evolution. Amazonia. That's one of the mythic places where women led, right? This is Brazilian Dr. Lucia Garces Loman. I met her when she was a visiting professor at UC Berkeley for a couple of years, and invited her to give a talk at the Sierra Club. She graciously accepted, gave an amazing talk all about the evolution of the Amazon. She is now the executive director of the International Rainforest, basically rainforest network of all the countries that have rainforest, right? And they have annual meetings and all this, and she's invited us to participate. That is a really powerful place to be. So Amazonia, this is just one example of an amazing female leader who could join the collective intelligence as a leadership council. That's up to greater minds than mine. And speaking, and one thing that's really interesting is, like, since we want to have diversity here, look, men are already going to be less than a third of the total representation, and of those, I'd be surprised. I mean, we might not have any white males amongst that male minority, right? Much less white male dominated. That's just ridiculous. I mean, in terms of numbers, it's just absolutely absurd. So we'll have full spectrum, women led, and, white males will be a tiny minority of the whole. That doesn't mean, we can't participate, obviously. But I'm just saying, in terms of leadership council representation, I think, probably maximum one would probably be pretty reasonable, I would say, just in terms of, diversity. All right. So we have this diverse, full rainbow, also indigenous led by indigenous wisdom. I've talked about the Lakota First Nation, which is in 100% women led, which is what inspired me to contribute the idea that just the women within the leadership council should have their own meetings. And those become just like this, there'll be just a certain amount of mystery around it, as there should be. Why not? Right? They get together and they need a safe space to birth the new world, because that's what we're doing here. We're birthing a new world. And just like in India, Dharmendra, I'm sure you know this, very up close and personal, having lived in India for, I think, at least a couple of years. Yeah, 3 years. So you know that in India, when a woman is giving birth, only women allowed, no men allowed. So, we need that sacred space, and it becomes this, it regains its natural place, right, at the head as the leadership. And what a relief for men, what a relief for the planet. And we now get to look at the whole, and men can stop this game of hoarding. We can find a way to just phase it out, right? This utterly destructive game of raping the planet and hoarding money, this lowest common denominator, for crying out loud. Well, if it makes money, then it must be a good thing. I'm investing. I'm in for a high yield, high return on my investment. Give me a break. We're talking about some narcissistic. This is like some, those rich kids growing up. They were like an only child. Everybody knew them growing up. They were an only child, and they just had mountains of toys and rooms and money and everything else. But they were absolutely miserable. Absolutely miserable. So that's what they're going to look like, is these miserable, barricaded in by acres of land, walls, big houses, come buildings, right? I mean, it's narcissistic little boy ego run amok.
And on that note, just to give a balance, because I've got to go in like 2 seconds, and I've been really, really lucky, I guess, because of my ardent discipline of going deep into meditation. I've had some unveilings from what is coming, and it never comes exact. It kind of comes in symbols, but it's going to be mind blowing. The transformations are going to start happening, like what's happening with us on bigger scales and more inclusively. And more incredibly, in ways we really can't even begin to fathom yet. And even though we're planning all this stuff, waves of other things are also planning and coming through too, all over the planet. We're being joined by all kinds of. This is happening everywhere, by the way, right now. This is a diaspora that is opening up, and it's seeding the whole planet now. And we're lucky to be a potent initiatory part of it. Diaspora, yeah, that's a good word. But anyway, just wanted to say that, and I've had some inklings and some visions of that, and hopefully I can open that up in the kind of, in the vegan synergy stuff, because that's the appropriate place to do it there. Here, I just want to keep adding the zest and the zeal and the oomph that makes all this kind of yummy and juicy as much as I can do, and keeps you guys, everybody, thinking and pushing you beyond your limitations. But love all you guys, and peace out. I'll catch you in the next meeting coming up.
Love you, Darvendra, brother. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. Yeah. Wow. But just sort of rocking on. I mean, don't you just see it as kind of this bifurcation? It's this sort of Coke versus Pepsi bifurcation between the male-dominated, manipulative, hurting traditional social media, right? Everything from poisonous tweets to this and that. Okay, there's some good stuff about it. Well, sure, I'm sure there was some good stuff about fill in the blank of something with, that may have started out with a good intended consequence and had myriad negative unintended consequences, which overwhelm. That's the case of current social media. We're totally separated, isolated, paranoid, all barricaded in these increasingly tight, small niches of thought, right? These tiny little bubbles of thought, right? Let's rebrand that. Mini think. In the 1950s, they had mini skirts. This is mini think. Seriously, let's call it for what it is. Let's bifurcate it, right? Versus, radical collective intelligence, collective wisdom. I still think we need a bigger name for the whole. Collective intelligence is a part of it, but other key parts of it are compassion, veganism. I would say compassion as initially expressed through veganism, but certainly not ending with veganism, right? So compassion is sort of the superset, but a prayer for compassion is just intimately linked. Interestingly, the first legalization model for medical cannabis was the Compassionate Care Act, branding cannabis as compassionate, right? And I actually started and founded and led the International Coalition of Compassionate Cannabis Organizations, spanning both cannabis and hemp. So anyway, just compassion that's coming from the whole trajectory, as we were talking about last night, Nolan.
So with the bifurcation then, with compassion, like what's the opposite end? Because I want to say that, like, if you're not a compassionate company, you're like this sociopathic, like self-destructive company, but there's got to be a word.
Well, we'll check it out. It just so happens, and I think this is a good moment to screen share about CCC, Certified Compassionate, because the bifurcation becomes so natural. Here, I'm going to screen share, show you what I'm talking about. All right, Evan, since you're dancing, let me know if you see CCC. Do you see CCC? Yo, 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 yo. Yep. I take that as an affirmative. All right. So anyway, certified compassionate companies, all profits to eradicating hunger. Right. This is going to be something that the women are just going to champion. The women leadership is going to say, wherever people are hungry, we're going to stop that now. I mean, like right now. And we're just going to roll out overnight community cafes. Right. Currently under attack by at least 2 different criminal organizations because they represent such a fundamental challenge to their power base, which is poor, oppressed, really oppressed people. And hunger is that extreme. Let them fall off the edge of the cliff. It lowers the bar, right? Community cafes raise the bar. They say, listen, whatever problems you got, you're not going to be hungry. You're going to have nutritious vegan food going forward 3 times a day. Every day, without exception. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hungerless Games. Right? Look at that virtuous cycle. This is going to become a huge story. Can you imagine when we eradicate hunger in Haiti? 90 miles off the United States coast, we have a country with, frankly, lower tier African standards of nourishment. Lower tier. right? It's so absurd. We're going to roll out community cafes all over Haiti. In fact, we've already got relationships in place for that that are actually just amazing. Anyway, and leading the charge. So you'd say, well, who's going to want to be a certified compassionate company, right? Well, let's take a look at the very first. Sato Hemp, led by my brother Takuya Sato, the Hemperor of Japan, and a very compassionate Hemperor at that. Anyway, it's real simple. So we've got a standard for this. And this is what's gonna, I think the fact that Radish, I mean, I will leave it up to the Leadership Council, but I think it should at a minimum be CCC or something of that magnitude of radical transformation that takes profit out of the hands of the rich white males, boom, and puts it directly to those who need it the most, who are the hungry, right? So anyway, it's like kind of that simple. So, but let's just imagine our way into it, right? We're not deciding anything. We're just brainstorming here. And I feel really freed up to do that now. And with this transformation underway, because I know that whatever I put out there, I don't have to make a choice about it. I don't have to make a decision about it, go or no go. I can just put stuff out there, knowing that a much wiser intelligence, right? The Women-Led Leadership Council, right? We'll sort it out. You can just be creative, right? In a really playful way, without worrying about bad ideas. Because I used to come up with bad ideas and then implement them because they were mine, like Gollum, right? Anyway.
See, I really like the way the meeting went today, and I sort of sensed like this bifurcation between meetings of the past and meetings of today, where Anne was leading, because we really did like open up a really soft space. Yeah, it just allowed me to see a little bit clearer. And then Dharmendra brought this idea of like the warrior, and we were talking about the mother, and that's what I really like about CCC and collective intelligence in general, is when you look at it through this like this spiritual, peaceful warrior, it's like what this is giving men the opportunity to do is to assume the mantle of warriorship that they're told in society they're supposed to have, but they're this benevolent warrior who walks around with their sword in their sheath, and they can just sidestep people. And I think that's, yeah, I don't know, it's just been, it was really rewarding today. I felt like it was like I feel myself like when I was going down my little journey, like a couple years ago, I felt like, I just felt like a warrior with a sword, but I didn't have anything to protect, and I was just wandering around. And then I found you guys, and then we've talked about collective intelligence, and it's like all of a sudden there's something worth standing in front of and protecting and supporting. And I don't have to become a monster to do that. It's just nice to have this vision of a future where, in order for you to lead an abundant, beautiful, rewarding life, you don't have to become this rich sociopath. And I think that's a vision of a future that I think would sell really well. It's like, oh, like, do you have a heart, but do you also have basic needs? This is the platform for you. I think I'm going to go and take a break before the next meeting.
Yeah, no problem, dude. But really awesome stuff. Sorry, I had a little technical problem and I couldn't unmute the microphone, but got that solved.
No worries.
But I just want to leave you with one thought, Evan, if I may, if you got a couple more minutes for me. Okay, so check it out. Consider that the bifurcation becomes compassionate versus what? Well, here's the cool thing. You don't even name the versus what. That's the most powerful way to point at something, is to not name it, right? What's the opposite of compassionate? Uncompassionate, but you don't name it. And say, oh, that's an uncompassionate company. Oh, yet another uncompassionate company. We just say, oh, we're creating a new standard, certified compassionate companies, CCC, right? We're about ending hunger, right? We're about going vegan. We're about ending prohibition. What could be cooler or sexier, frankly? Hello, right? The women are going to come because they're going to be just super empowered and excited, and it's just the right thing to do, and they just know it, and they've known it for a long time, and they've been quite frustrated for a long time. The men who get it immediately are just super cool. I don't know how else to say it. If you get it, you're super cool. And so it's, compassionate versus uncompassionate, right? Compassionate versus uncompassionate, or maybe non-compassionate. In other words, if you're here to hoard, if you're here to rape and pillage and hoard, you're uncompassionate. Whether it's other animals, thank you, herd, rape, pillage, and herd, rape, pillage, and hoard, rape, pillage, and herd, rape, pillage, and hoard. If you're here to rape, pillage, and herd or hoard, and other terrible things to the planet, to other species, to our brother and sister species, or all the way to other human beings. Human trafficking, which these criminal organizations are the ones that do that. That's why I'm so strong in my stance that we need to eradicate all forms of organized crime, as you can see on my Facebook page. But anyway, that's we're gonna have to get that up on Radish as well. But anyway, the bottom line is it's, like I say, compassionate versus uncompassionate, ending hunger versus permitting hunger, right? Going vegan versus carnivore and violent, ending prohibition versus imposing domination on people, sending people to jail for smoking a weed that can grow out of the freaking concrete. Dude, what are you going to prohibit next? Air? Sunlight? I mean, it's just absurd. Anyway, this becomes the coolest thing on earth, this certified compassionate, and the community cafes that go with them, right? Hello. It's the coolest thing on earth. Anyway, I'll share some more stuff after you take off, stuff you've already seen, like from Mexico and whatnot. Anyway, great to see you, Evan. Thanks for hanging in there with me for a few more minutes. Really appreciate it. We'll see you in a little less than an hour. Okay, see you soon. Anyway, let me go ahead. Let me just pause for a minute. Okay, before Nolan heads out and we take a break, what's really cool, if you think about it, and going back to some of the slides I shared at the end of Friday's meeting, going back to Mexico and working with President Fox and ending prohibition of cannabis, right? The first medical cannabis law was called the Compassionate Care Act. So the word compassion, I mean, for you, isn't compassion associated with legalizing medical cannabis?
Yeah.
Okay, so you got compassion there. You got compassion in ending hunger, right?
Yep.
You've got compassion in going vegan. And finally, the jewel in the crown is the divine feminine.
Yep.
Mother Earth and Mother, right? And finally putting the sexes back in order.
Yep.
I mean, it pissed off Adam so much, he fired his first wife and married Eve. His first wife wasn't like Lilith or something like that.
Well, this reminds me. Okay, it's a quick little story. I was at a gay pride festival, and I had worked an animal rights table for most of the day. And at the end of it, my husband and I walked around, and we just started talking to people in different booths about veganism. And a number of those were religious groups that were there. And they gave me a really hard time. And then the Pagan Society was there. And they were super open to this whole idea of the divine feminine. They were not vegan at the time.
Mm.
But they told me that they were going to go do some more research and that they would probably be promoting veganism. I did not stay in touch with them. This is a couple of years ago. But the whole idea that compassion is the thing that can draw people in and get people to begin to think differently. I mean, if you don't have to be rivals, if you don't have to fight with each other anymore, what is possible?
Totally.
It's incredible.
And we get to co-create, which is so much more fun, so much more powerful, right? And by making that first co-creation, you know, the cooling of the planet, the ending of hunger, right? The ending of violence, right? Coincident with the ending of hunger, right? Because now there's just much more of an abundance of food when we don't enslave all these animals.
This is Silas's whole point about normalizing nonviolence.
Yeah.
That we live in a normalized violence society, and it's not the US society, it's a world that holds at its core violence is a necessary part of life, period. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And in order to succeed, you have to be more violent. You have to be willing to be more violent than the guy standing next to you. That's how you succeed. And what we're trying to do is get to a place where we say, no, violence is not at the core. Violence happens, accidents happen, people get hurt, animals get hurt. I mean, you fall off a cliff, violence does happen, but it does not have to happen intentionally. And we can erase it from the everyday routine of the vast majority of humans and non-humans on the planet. It is possible to do. And
Wow.
it took me a while to actually grasp really the idea that we could live in a non-violent world, that it is possible. It is possible.
Wow. So you have normalized nonviolence versus normalized violence. So marketing speak, I don't think I went through, did I go through the bifurcation slides with you, Anne, on Friday? Like really fast?
I don't think so. Maybe.
Okay, you'll know as soon as you see them. So just let me know, because this puts all this marketing wisdom in perspective.
No, I have not seen this.
Okay, so you're gonna love this. All right. So remember when first there was just Coke, and then there was Coke and some very small competitors. And then Pepsi came along and bifurcated it. You with me, Anne?
Yep.
Remember when there was just food? Anne and I are old enough to remember when there was just food.
Yep.
And then it got bifurcated.
Yep.
Okay. In our lifetimes. And now you can get organic everything. You don't have a barbecue, it can be all organic. Even organic briquettes. Bring your girlfriend organic flowers. If you get lucky, you can sleep it off in an organic mattress. And at the end, light up an organic cigarette. Finally, a cigarette that's good for you. And it's huge and growing. Anyway, remember when there was just retail? Ann and I are old enough to remember when there was just retail. And then it got bifurcated. We're now setting after the biggest chunk of all economically, which is the entire global economy. We're going to bifurcate it. Now listen to this. Dance to the beat if you feel like it. The choice is yours. The choice is yours. You can go compassionate or you can go uncompassionate, right? You can easily tell the compassionate ones because they've got red for blood or actual blood on their hands like Nike, right? Sato Hemp versus Nike. Healthy Cola versus Coca-Cola. Community cafes versus McDonald's. Okay, going vegan instead of being carnivorous, ending hunger instead of permitting it, ending prohibition instead of domination, or just ridiculous domination based on drugs, the divine feminine versus the patriarchy, right? Normalized nonviolence versus normalized violence. The choice is yours. Cha-chinga, right?
Yep.
So that's why I think, see, Radish, if the leadership council approves it, I would submit that Radish become CCC, certified compassionate.
Yeah,
And,
I love that.
yeah, we showed the slides while you were with the dogs, being compassionate, by the way.
Well, no, I was listening to their demands. Those become demands at about 4:30. We have to go out.
But anyway, so it's just like everything fits. The final missing pieces in order were nonviolence and the divine feminine. Those were the two missing pieces.
Yep.
And now they're in place.
So, and I would also suggest that what we want to do on a global level, we have done in 7 weeks. Oops.
That's the affirmation right there. That's the affirmation right there.
He absolutely agrees. It's okay, buddy. All right, come on. Come back and talk to us in here.
Darmin would say that's no coincidence, and I agree.
Right. I believe that too. So in 7 weeks, we went from not really knowing what we were doing or who we are as a group, right?
Yeah.
And then we got into a little bit of we got an idea of where it is we're going. And then we had a little bit of a falling apart.
Yeah.
We didn't really fall apart. We had a little discord.
Yeah.
And then we were able to pull that back together and find some excitement and some clarity about where we want to go. And then we dropped into this heart space, this compassionate space today, where we were feeling each other. We weren't just thinking about it, we were feeling each other. Now, we're not going to always stay in that heart space and that compassionate space in the way that we were in it today, but there was a feeling in the group that was different than any other time that we met. And so when I'm thinking about this on a global scale, it seems to me, both thinking and feeling, that we just modeled what we want to do. And given the fact that they're recorded, we can actually go back and take a look at this and see. I don't know how to use it. It's very useful in my thinking that if we could do this in 7 weeks, it's more meetings, right? 7, 8, 9, 9 gatherings, I think.
Yeah. I think today's this upcoming one is number 7, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, but then we had the Friday and Sunday.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I was just counting the vegan collective intelligence ones. Vegan reflection and all that.
Right. Well, yeah, and see when you add those, so I need to think a little bit more, but the idea, Jamin, that we can do this globally in a short period of time, I don't think we can do it in 7 weeks, but I don't think it's going to take 7 decades.
Well,
I don't think it's going to take 7 years. It's going to take more time than this small group of people took, but we just moved through this incredible.
Well, we went through the valley of death 2 weeks ago. Let's put it that way, right? Where it was all discordant and we weren't making any progress. And then we took a major leap out of there a week ago. And then in the 7 days since leading up to this moment, it's been just
exponentially.
And half of that evolution happened during this one meeting right here, right now, today. Hello, the divine feminine. It was right in front of us. Melissa kept telling me this, but I just somehow couldn't quite integrate it.
Well, and Jamin, the first 2 meetings, after the first 2 meetings, Chuck said to me, so, what do you really think? And I said, honestly, I really think there are too many men.
Yeah.
The women aren't being heard. And it's not that you weren't listening or open to that. It's that there's a whole dynamic that happens where you don't really want to speak. It's complex, right? And so I actually got to a point last Tuesday, where I said, I'm going to give it one more shot.
Oh my goodness.
Because I really want to be part of this. And yet I'm becoming more uncomfortable. And then Friday I got home and there was that, join us if you can. And I had been out and I jumped on, and then these incredible things happened. And then Sunday, these incredible things happened. And then today, and it's like, oh my God, this is really, really cool. But this whole idea of the model that we have just done, what we want to do on this global scale, and there is something really important to learn about going through that and thinking about that as we move into a much bigger realm, to understand it and to not give up hope at the points that are difficult, and to be wise about how we move through those spaces. I'm not sure what I'm saying.
Well,
it's just forming.
Yeah. Well, the beautiful thing is, I think we're just doing it by doing it. As simple as oversimplistic as that may sound. Another way of characterizing it is experiential learning.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're familiar with landmark education.
Landmark?
Yeah, landmark.
No, but I'll.
Anyway, it just, they've got a really amazing courses that last like 3 days straight, like 10 hours per day, really intensive. It's basically a retreat, except you don't sleep there. You go home and sleep, or stay in a hotel if you're from out of town. But it's experiential learning. Like, you learn it by doing it, right? Not by reading a book about it. And so this is something that I really think defies books. It's something you have to experience. And what's interesting is, because we're recording, we're giving the gift of the recording to those who weren't able to be here. But it is such a privilege to actually be here as we birth the new world.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, absolutely.
And that's, I think, really going to draw in the right kind of people, right? Who are going to get it, right? Not because it's popular, not because it's risk-free. It's certainly not risk-free, I would maintain, right? We're really putting ourselves out there and ringing in a whole new order that, might also, include, getting out of this possession trance generally, even more generally than hurting animals, hurting human beings, human trafficking, etc. Totalitarian agriculture, where we exterminate all life except for, Roundup Ready corn, and we spray on the Roundup. You get what I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
We're, so I've actually, so I think where we go from here is we basically do exactly what we're doing, which is communicate the essence of it, communicate the core of it, package it up, where maybe we start with Friday, because we kind of needed to get through that before we could even envision such a powerful super intelligence, right?
Yep.
Now look at how far we've come. And so I think we package it as a series, and we share it with all of our friends and loved ones and say, you got to check this out. This thing's happening now, jump in, and we're co-creating this, right? And there's only a few things set in stone. And not that this is the list, but I've come up with a list of 10 things. You guys want to hear them? And it's a bifurcation. These are the 10 dimensions of the fault lines. Bow, bow, bow. Okay, you ready, Anne?
Yeah, absolutely.
You ready? Watching the recording? I'm just talking to the people watching this recording. Are you ready? Okay. It's divine feminine super intelligence versus mini think. Mini think compresses it all down to the zero-dimensional dollar, lowest common denominator. It's compassionate versus uncompassionate. It's ending hunger versus permitting hunger. Actually fomenting hunger in the case of certain dictatorships and criminal organizations, as I've mentioned. It's veganism, and nonviolence. I'm just gonna put those two together. Veganism and nonviolence, those two go together. So the list went down to 9 from 10. Versus carnivorous violent. Ending prohibition versus basically totalitarianism, right? Making mushrooms and weeds illegal. Give me a break. What are you gonna do, make air illegal? The divine feminine versus the patriarchy. Thank you, Spare Rib Magazine. I'll leave it at that. Nonviolence, yeah, I've talked about it. Let's see. And wisdom, actually it's down to 8 now. Wisdom versus whatever the opposite is of that. And I don't know, maybe even entrancement or something like that, when they're just totally stuck in the matrix and have no clue that there even is an out, much less an intention to get out or break out or transform or dissolve, etc. Which gets to the final, which is basically divine feminine Mother Earth, giving Mother Earth back to herself, liberating her, versus dividing her up, chopping her up, and raping her, and fracking her, and in so many ways destroying her and her children. Versus the possession trance, mine, more for me, me, for me. And then if a philosopher were to come up to that Gollum-like character and say, yeah, I get that you're saying, basically globalization, neoliberalism to maximize that you can possess for you, but what's the philosophical understanding? What? What's the philosophical underpinning of this? Huh? In the end, for what? And Gollum's answer is, for me. It's just this self-feeding narcissism with no other basis other than more for me. Period. End of story. Right?
Right. Absolutely.
So we got it down to 8. I think that's a good number. Anyway, 8 dimensions of the fault line between compassionate versus uncompassionate. Simple as that. Bam, 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 bam. You got Millennium Development Goals. Here are the crazy 8, right? And
so compassion versus cruelty. Compassion versus
love it. Versus cruelty. I love that's it. Ultimately, it's cruelty to Mother Earth. The ultimate cruelty is extinction. Right. The ultimate cruelty is extinction. Cruelty. That's naming it for what it is. Thank you, Anne. Oh my goodness. And look at this combination. Look at this new family that's just come together. You got this hairy guy with a mullet and a dirty sweater. You got freaking badass Nolan and you, Anne, Melissa. Look at all these amazing people who are here.
It's cool. And like I said, I personally know a lot of people that I think would want to be involved and who have a lot of wisdom to contribute and who have large networks.
I love it.
And so it's just about, for me, figuring out how to sell it.
Yeah.
And I don't even like that imagery, right? How to invite people in a way that doesn't scare them off, either in terms of messaging or time, because, nobody has time anymore. And so, trying to figure that out. And the scaring off part, honestly